the guys that we have at the top of our rankings at the quarterback position, we have Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes. You can maybe make a case for some other people to go in there, but where are you on your top three right now? Keeping in mind, of course, that things can change as the week progresses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously when you have Kyler Murray facing Seattle, it's very appealing, especially after he has one of the best plays of that we're going to see for a long time after last week. But we also have to remember he really wasn't doing much through the air throughout the course of that game. It was really on the ground where he's been just absolutely phenomenal. So I think there's obviously a case for him, but I actually have Mahomes as my number one right now. I mean, it's really splitting hairs when you're at the top. I actually had somebody on Twitter ask me today, he said, who would you rather for the rest of the season, Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson? And I go, both. I mean, what do we do here? You're in a good situation regardless of where you go. I do think that people may be a little discouraged because we have recency bias in season-long fantasy football with last week's performance from Russell Wilson. But all week I was pointing out it was a really interesting litmus test of that Rams defense, which has been phenomenal. Darius Williams, everybody needs to know this name. This kid is absolutely playing out of his mind. And yet another, he could be in the Ravens secondary. He was buried in that Ravens secondary. Now here he is getting an opportunity with the Rams and shining. So, I mean, I have Russ as the bottom of those three, but I do like the matchup for him because, as we know, you can certainly throw on Arizona.
All right. Well, outside of the top three, is there a guy or two that you think you are going to be relatively high on this week in comparison to the consensus?
I think that guy might end up being Ben Roethlisberger for me. Last week, we saw a very rare feat in a lot of scoring formats, PPR scoring formats. We had 3 Steelers receivers with 20-plus PPR points. That's outrageous right there. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Ben's going to spread the ball around. You have, when it's not Deontay Johnson, it's Chase Claypool. When it's not Chase Claypool, it's Juju Smith-Schuster. And even when it's not those guys, maybe it's Eric Ebron. So many weapons at his disposal. And I don't see that shifting, especially with the play of James Conner, which I don't know what the heck's happening there. I've watched the last 2 games. He does not look like the same player. I've been telling people, all day here on a Tuesday to pick up Benny Snell and just stash him just in case, because we really don't know, what's going to happen. Then on top of it, you face a Jacksonville secondary that is young and inexperienced. Sidney Jones is really the most experienced. Trey Herndon. I mean, these are still inexperienced guys. Herndon gets beat deep basically every single week. CJ Henderson's getting picked on. And what does a veteran quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger do? Pick on a rookie corner. So I think it's another big week for Ben.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Raybon, I'm going to give you the first bite of the apple here. Maybe you can snipe Sean and highlight the guy he is high on. Who is a quarterback you are relatively high on this week?
So I like a couple. Justin Herbert going against the New York Jets. Herbert every week in, week out, he's shown that he has, not only the throwing chops despite being a rookie, but the rushing chops to kind of stick with these top quarterbacks. And you're going to need that, whether it's DFS season long every week, because you have these guys like Kyler and, Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson running the football in addition to throwing it. Same goes for Cam Newton. He's not really throwing the football that effectively because of the supporting cast. But I think in this matchup against Houston, one of the worst defenses in the league, he can have a pretty good game on the ground. And it's one of the easier throwing matchups for him as well. And then going down the list, Joe Burrow at 5.5K. This team has been extremely pass heavy, and they finally get a pretty decent matchup. Last week against Pittsburgh was tough, but in this spot, I think Joe Burrow can have a huge game and kind of put up numbers similar to guys that are at the top tier of pricing.
Sean, who do you like here?
So I'm pretty high on Jameis Winston this week. I think he's a GPP play. You can't trust him in cash because we're not sure how much Taysom Hill is going to factor in. But certainly in season longs, he's worth a stash because it sounds like Drew Brees could be out for quite some time. This offense is going to look a lot different with Jameis Winston slinging it around. So I'm excited to see how that pans out. And the other guy is Deshaun Watson. He's a bit cheaper this week. He's 6,500. I think, people might, overweight last week's windy game. I think it's wise to just throw that out. But he was on fire the previous 4 games. coincidentally after Bill O'Brien got fired, where he was averaging 320 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 35 rushing yards. I think he'll bounce back to that level and be a top 4 QB this week. The matchup against the Patriots isn't ideal, but again, I think people might be overlooking him this week after his poor performance in the win at Cleveland.
Yeah, so Watson is standing out in some of our Fantasy Labs models, and he has the highest projected plus minus that we have on the slate this week. So certainly someone to keep in mind. And Sean, you got me. Winston was the guy that I was going to talk about. I'm very bullish on him this week with the weapons he has, and then that matchup he has going against the Atlanta Falcons, who allow the most fantasy points in the league to opposing quarterbacks. Just light my money on fire this week with Jameis Winston. This is the path that I'm going to go down. Jeff, who is someone you are relatively low on?
I think we have to be careful with Jameis Winston for the season-long crowd, though. Jameis does, even watching that game, it's like, dude, Alvin Kamara's right here, man. He's right to your right. Just look. You don't have to look downfield all day long, every day with Jameis Winston. That drives me nuts with him, and that's actually not good for Michael Thomas either. High ADOT quarterback with low ADOT receivers, not really a good mesh, but in DFS, obviously. And I do think that Sean, the answer is we're going to see more Taysom Hill than we want to see. That's how much Taysom Hill we're going to see. ESPN folks, tight end, Taysom Hill. Let's go, baby. Let's go. I have Lamar Jackson on my list. And if he didn't put up at least 2 touchdowns against the Patriots, he wasn't going to put up 2 touchdowns at any point this season. And of course, just as we drew it up, it was to Willie Snead on both touchdowns. Thanks, Lamar. But I just feel like every week people look at him with that massive ceiling and they think, all right, well, this is going to be the week. This is going to be the week. This is going to be the week. In season long, you kind of made your own bed with that, and you kind of have to just keep rolling with him. But in DFS, absolute fade for me. Occasionally, I'll be like, no, I'll build a lineup or 2, but I'm not going to do it this week.
Raybon, who are you low on?
So for me, it's Aaron Rodgers going against the Indianapolis Colts. We know Aaron Rodgers is going to take advantage of easy matchups. He's been doing that his whole career. And as of late, really the only thing that stopped him has been, tougher matchups, a defense that can get pressure, cover well, because Green Bay really, Devontae Adams, and there is a big drop off, even though Valdez-Scantling has come on some over these past couple of games. So Aaron Rodgers sitting there near the top of pricing going against the Indianapolis Colts. This is a team that's allowed the second fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. They held, Ryan Tannehill had thrown for multiple touchdowns in all but 2 of his starts as a Titan. They held him to just 1 touchdown and 147 yards. Lamar Jackson, as Jeff kind of talked about the week before, just 170 yards, no touchdowns through the air. Really, it's been tough for quarterbacks to get going against this team. So Aaron Rodgers, a little too pricey for me this week in DFS.
Sean, who are you fading?
Yeah, I'm right there with Raybon on Rodgers. Way too expensive on DraftKings. He's $7K, the second highest priced QB. Season long, you still have to start him. I consider him a low end RB1, but lower your expectations this week considerably. The other guy I'm fading, it's pretty easy to fade him at this price, but Kirk Cousins at 6,200. Yes, the matchup is great against the Cowboys, but the Vikings are going to be perfectly content giving Dalvin Cook 30 plus carries here and maybe Alexander Madison 15 plus. They have no qualms about running the shit out of the ball. So I think, Kirk Cousins' floor and ceiling are lowered this week. He's just way too expensive, even though I do like this matchup.
All right. A guy I'm fading here is Tom Brady. The Rams have allowed the second fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. As Jeff mentioned, Darius Williams is playing extraordinarily well opposite Jalen Ramsey, who I think is playing at, an all-pro level that we saw in 2017. And then, of course, they have Aaron Donald on that defensive line to wreak havoc. So I think the Rams defense will be able to challenge that Buccaneers offense enough to bump Brady down and make him more of a low-end QB1, high-end QB2, instead of the guy who, was throwing just touchdown upon touchdown last week. Sean, it is time to kick it to you for our quarterback player prop. By the way, I should tell everyone that you should check out the Fantasy Labs player prop tool, where the props with the bet quality of 10 have a 60% win rate over the past 2 years And when player props are posted, you can bet them at BetMGM. Sean, give us the player prop.
We're going with Jameis Winston, total passing yards this week against the Falcons. I have the line set at 258.5. But before you guys tell me you're over under, Jeff, I do agree that season long he's a bit risky because he has a lower floor. But my number one rule with Jameis Winston is do not watch the game. Just go do something else, and after the game, check his stats, and it usually turns out fine.
That's a
Sean,
good point, man. I got to take you up on that because it drives you nuts. I'd rather
really
watch him
does.
dodging that giant ball bag drill thing that he does than watch him actually play.
Sean, what was the line again?
258.5.
I will take the over because I am a donkey, and I'm just imagining one way or another, whether it's through design or whether it's through the team getting down and Winston having to air it out. I'm just imagining that he goes over here. I have this closer to 280.
Whoa.
I have him way under. I'm going because I'm looking at the splits of him and Taysom in kind of lining up at quarterback, and Winston was about 75%, Hill 25%, and there's just so much uncertainty here in New Orleans. In addition to the fact that we kind of blamed it on Drew Brees, but the fact is New Orleans runs a whole different kind of scheme than Tampa Bay did, and it's a lot more short passing. I think Breeze's ADOT coming into last week was like under 6 yards. And obviously that's somewhat to do with the arm. But after seeing Winston play, I don't think they're going to want him to necessarily air it out. And then on top of that, you could have Hill mixing in for X percentage of the quarterback snaps with Winston going out to wide receiver. So I have this still in the low 200s. I may rise it up, but I do have about a 75-25 split right now with Winston and Taysom.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I actually think that's very fair. I'll take a slight under. I'm maybe not as under as Raybon, but I think that's really the key here. When you look at the offense, who's the deep ball target? Is it Traquan Smith? Is Traquan Smith going to be okay for this game? I don't know who they throw the ball to downfield, and Jameis simply just does not have the ability to look in the short and intermediate. And I don't know if that changes. I know a lot of people say, well, hey, Teddy was fine. Well, Teddy is a low ADOT quarterback. And yes, he was fine. He was actually a perfect replacement for Drew Brees last year. I don't think Jameis is. And I wouldn't put it past that, Sean Payton and that coaching staff to put Taysom in more than 25%. So yeah, I think I'll take the under as well.
Yeah, if Taysom Hill actually sees significant playing time, then I'm drawing dead on this. I'm sort of banking on the idea that they actually look and say like, okay, one of these guys is a quarterback and one of them is more like our rotational gadget player. When we look at what happened with Teddy Bridgewater last year, he was actually the guy who was back there taking snaps, and we didn't really see Taysom Hill. So I'm thinking that maybe because this injury happened in the middle of the game, they went with this approach of kind of platooning the guys. Whereas if they know going into the game that Winston is the starter, he will actually play something pretty close to a starter number of snaps. But as we say, it's all a projection at this point. We really have no way of knowing.
Yeah, it's a wide range of outcomes, but it's funny because anytime I think, oh, they should use Taysom Hill more this game, they use him less. So he's an enigma. It's always hard to peg, but yeah, I'm closer to Freeman. I think, Winston should play, 90% of the snaps under center this game. I'm thinking.